Hello everyone, this is Piccolo Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about Dragon Ball Z, the overall series, its impact and legacy, indeed with both mainstream culture and entertainment, and why I firmly believe that it is and still remains the greatest anime series of all time. Now there'll likely be spoilers within this review on the series itself, so just be aware when going into this overall video. Now, as we all know, mostly, the series itself originated from the manga called Dragon Ball, which was created by Akira Toriyama way back in 1984 and ran all the way to 1995, consisting of 42 volumes. It has of course remained amongst the best-selling manga of all time, with over 250 to 300 million copies sold worldwide. Now the story itself charted the adventures of a young child known as Goku with special abilities, who's trained in the way of the martial arts all throughout his adult life. And the manga was adapted into two huge anime shows, the first being Dragon Ball, which centered on Goku's young life as he had various adventures searching for the world for the mystical orbs known as the 7 Dragon Balls, which when collated together would summon a huge dragon to grant the holder a certain wish. Now the Dragon Ball anime very much mixed elements of action, comedy, fantasy and adventure, and it successfully ran from 1986 to 1989. Now the Dragon Ball Z anime focused on Goku's adult life, where he discovers his true origin as a Saiyan warrior who was sent to Earth in order to take over the planet and acquire it for the race of the Saiyans. Dragon Ball Z picked up the last remaining 325 chapters of the manga, and it had one of the longest successful runs within all of animation, running from 1988 to 1995, consisting of 291 episodes. Now so much can be said about Dragon Ball Z in terms of its influence, the genre of anime, and also within standard of animation. The series for me continued the huge discovery of anime that I had come across during its breakthrough within the early to mid 1990s. The genre itself introduced me to a whole new dimension in animated storytelling. The likes of Akira, Fist of the North Star, Ninja Scroll all exhibited a huge level of energy and action and violence that I had never seen before previously in animation. Throughout my years, I grew up watching all of the classic animated shows from the 1980s, the likes of He-Man, Transformers, Thundercats, and of course later on in the 1990s, the likes of Batman the animated series, X-Men the animated series, Spider-Man, Superman, and later on the likes of Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. And during watching all of these shows, I'd always wondered if there could ever be a long-running animated show consisting all of those elements of action and violence that I had seen previously within the anime movies. And in that aspect, this is where Dragon Ball Z truly delivered, introducing a whole generation of viewers within Western culture who had discovered it primarily on the Toonami channel, which was part of the Cartoon Network. Now the show itself is of course defined very much by its level of action and scale, but perhaps the greatest element of Dragon Ball Z and what separates it from almost every other anime is the story. It's one of the few animated shows in general where the story actually progresses and moves the continuity forward. There's a constant compelling narrative that's full of high stakes and escalation. Unlike so many other shows which return back to a status quo at some stage of the story, Dragon Ball Z always reaches a different point at the end of each chapter, or indeed each saga. The various sagas throughout the series would see the main protagonist come up against a more powerful villain, be defeated, then have to recover, build himself up, train to become stronger, and then try to defeat the villain once again. So there was always that hook, that end goal, a reason to stay within the story and see it all the way through to its eventual conclusion. What also adds to the stakes is of course the never-ending search for the Dragon Balls, and Dragon Ball Z actually made the quest to find them far more pivotal than the original Dragon Ball anime did. And this was very apparent certainly in the earlier part of the series. Another distinctive aspect of Dragon Ball Z is very much the concepts that we see throughout the series. It very much covers the typical hero's journey where we follow the lead character having to develop, learn, improve, train harder, strive to be better, push themselves to the absolute limit. Over the course of the story, we would see the lead characters stumble, fail, struggle to reach the next level. Any reward or power level, skill or ability truly has to be earned. And it's watching that transition that keeps you compelled to the characters, especially if you are into any kind of sports or athletics. Seeing these personalities extend themselves to go way beyond their physical limits and boundaries makes the show even more relatable. The other concepts of course was seeing the whole generation and transmission of energy beams and waves and projectiles. The whole idea of having to charge up your power and actually seeing the wave of energy surround the character was something that we really hadn't seen a lot at the time of animation. When Dragon Ball Z rose to prominence, the series really took this concept of seeing the whole energy surround an individual and really took it to another level. And the show developed this idea even further by tying these power-ups to the own character's personal motivations. There was something far more intrinsic in terms of the abilities and powers, which of course was typified mostly by the iconic Super Saiyan transformation, where we would see characters' appearance change distinctively by being consumed by a huge explosion of a yellow flame, resulting in having huge blonde spiky hair with blue turquoise eyes. So iconic to many viewers, and it was really that visualization of going beyond your limits and capabilities, taking yourself to the higher level, something that we can all gravitate to whether you are a fan of anime or not. Now, in terms of the power scaling and action, this of course is something that became so synonymous with the show. Never before had we seen such levels of destruction and carnage within an animated series, where you would see whole cities, even planets, completely destroyed by the characters and their abilities. The show, however, made these scenes matter most by really emphasising on the level of danger, peril and jeopardy. The intensity was of course elevated by the incredible fight sequences, of which there are so many throughout the series. There was such a huge fusion of physicality in terms of the martial arts, with also using energy beams and projectiles. So many iconic sequences throughout the series, where we'd see power beam struggles within two characters. We would see multiple sequences in characters fighting in the air, underwater, congested cities, or very much so in desert landscapes. We would see a whole host of special fight techniques and special moves which will become so distinguishable throughout the show, the likes of the Spirit Bomb, the Final Flash, the Misenko, the Tri-Beam, and also most famously the Kamehameha. There was such a great cinematic sweep in the build-up of these fights, and this is what made them so special. Now, people may have complained about the long face-offs within characters staring at each other, very much evoking the spirit of the Sergio Leone westerns with the long wide panning shots. Again, this is something that would very rarely seen in terms of an animated series. The level of violence throughout the show was really quite startling because it's not mindless or gratuitous. You don't have violence happening every 5 minutes, but when the violence does happen, it really does grip you. Another big aspect of the show was indeed the character development, and the show is one of the best examples of an anime that has a distinctive cast of characters that all go through some progressive arcs throughout the series. Of course, in the most iconic lead role we have Goku, the main hero, who we obviously see as a carefree, much more of a thrill-seeking personality, always searching for the biggest challenge and adventure. We see him incur various amounts of victories and defeats. We have Gohan, who is Goku's son, who perhaps has the most significant growth and progression throughout the entire series. We see Gohan's journey from a young kid who's always against fighting as opposed to his father. We always learn of the hidden potential throughout multiple arcs where he unleashes it far more through seeing the mistreatment of others. We see him eventually grow to become temporarily the main antagonist of the show in his adulthood. We have Piccolo, who is a Namek, who was the final big villain for the final arc of the Dragon Ball anime, and Piccolo would go on to become the eventual mentor and have an extreme close friendship with Gohan in what was probably the most strongest connections throughout the series in terms of a bond between two characters. We see Piccolo increase his powers through fusions with other Namek beings. We learn that he has a physical and spiritual connection with Kami, the original guardian of the earth. And throughout multiple arcs, Piccolo would at many times become just as powerful as Goku. Later on throughout the series, Piccolo would become far more of a mentor and less of a warrior, and we would see him guiding the likes of Dende, Goten and the younger Trunks as well. We then of course have to talk about Vegeta, a firm fan favourite and one of the most compelling characters of the series. Vegeta was the prince of the Saiyan race, who like Piccolo starts off as the villain in the Saiyan saga, wanting to attain the Dragon Balls for immortality. Eventually he shifts far more into an anti-hero as he becomes completely obsessed and driven by wanting to surpass Goku in power, and at times he too becomes the most powerful fighter within the show. Truly proud of his Saiyan heritage, Vegeta firmly believes that due to his birthright that he is deemed to be the most powerful Saiyan within all of the universe. We also have Trunks, who is introduced so iconically, where we learn that he comes from a future destroyed by the villainous androids. He travels back in time to warn the other warriors of the impending threat of the androids to try and preserve their own future timeline. Trunks was very much driven by the loss of the future Gohan within his timeline at the hands of the androids, and for a short space of time he would become a prominent member within a team of heroes and look to constantly build relationships with Vegeta in the present timeline. Now, what made the show so special is that all of these big characters could carry the show as the main lead, in that it didn't just rely on one main protagonist. You would also have supporting characters such as Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, Bulma and Master Roshi, who admittedly did all become far more marginalised as the series progressed, but still had plenty of standout moments throughout the show. However, as the saying goes, the hero is only as good or defined by the villain, and in Dragon Ball Z, he truly excelled in this area by presenting antagonists who were far more powerful than the heroes, but more importantly had clear, defined and compelling motivations. Vegeta was the main villain in the Saiyan saga, but it was the emergence of Frieza where we truly saw one of the most iconic villains within all of anime. Frieza was a master alien being, ruling large sectors of the universe, claiming dominion over the Saiyan race and eventually destroying them after continually being wary of their increasing power. Frieza would go on to search the Dragon Balls for immortality. Frieza was always renowned for his smaller size, yet had a cold, ruthless nature and distinctive voice. I think most fans would agree that Frieza was indeed the best villain within the franchise. And during his role we also had the Guinea Force, which was Frieza's special platoon of super-powered beings that would very much come into conflict with the likes of Goku, Vegeta, Gohan and Krillin. We later on had the androids 17 and 18, who were a pair of teenagers, male and female, responsible for the destruction of Trunks' future. They were simply attracted by the thrill of living their own free will, and destroying the world was very much more of a game to them. We would then have Cell, an android consisting of all of the hero's special powers and abilities, and was designed with the goal of reaching the ultimate state of perfection. He had to do this by consuming the androids 17 and 18, and Cell was far more concerned with testing himself against all competitors. He was equally as compelling and even more powerful villain than what Frieza was. We then later on had Majin Buu, who was very much more of a dark, psychotic alien monster, simply fueled by complete destruction. He had been kept dominant within the Earth for centuries before being unleashed by the wizard known as Babidi. Now what made the villains so special is that they weren't your typical favourite of the weak villains or one note. They would take several sagas to battle and defeat. You were constantly wondering how exactly the heroes would defeat them, since no matter how much they elevated themselves, it was still an almighty battle to beat the villain. It's that classic true way of writing villains within any story, something that so much of new anime could learn from when adapting great villains. The overall structure of the series was very much defined by the separate sagas. Now for me personally, I loved everything from the Saiyan saga all the way through to the Cell games. The particular standouts were the Frieza saga, the Imperfect and Perfect Cell sagas, and also the Cell games itself, and it was up to this point where I believe the series was a near masterpiece. Now admittedly the series did start to show signs of creative strain after the Cell games, not fully utilising the role of Gohan as the main protagonist after that saga, and when we very much tapped into later the Fusion and Majin Buu sagas, Majin Buu as the villain really lacked the personality and nuance of previous villains. As we headed into the latter stages of the series itself, the various power-ups and transformations had really lost their impact as we went through various stages of the Super Saiyan 3 and the fusions concerning the likes of Gotenks and Vegeta. The show did become less compelling as a result. There were also certain flaws in terms of the story where we would indeed get certain filler within the sagas. Some fights were prolonged, most notably the fight against Frieza, which I'm sure consisted of around 17 episodes in total. Now part of the reason was for this because at the time the anime was being produced at the same time as the manga, so at many times they had to include certain filler episodes in order for the manga to catch up with the series. The standard of animation would indeed fluctuate in quality due to the huge amount of episodes being produced. We would get certain episodes where the animation style was stunning in terms of the more physical and hand-drawn elements of the certain characters. There would sometimes be weaker episodes where the animation you could clearly see had less effort and didn't quite flow as well as other episodes. And as the show went on into its later stages, the focus became too locked on the same characters, and the likes of the other supporting characters got relegated far more to comic relief. Now another huge aspect that we simply have to talk about is of course Bruce Falconer's iconic score. The American soundtrack was a huge fusion of rock, techno and synthesized tone, creating so much of the adrenaline rush and atmosphere throughout the series. It was such an impressionable musical score that it really is hard to associate the series without Bruce Falconer's music. Now having said that, there were various other dubs that have been adapted over the years in terms of the show, and when it initially started there was also an Ocean dub which was used within the first 53 episodes of the show, and I have to be honest that there are times when this dub is actually superior to some of Falconer's music for certain episodes. We also had around 15 feature-length anime movies, now for me the best of which were Bardock, the father of Goku, which focused on Goku's father and the Saiyan race when they were under the rule of Frieza. The history of Trunks was also a compelling story centering on the future timeline of Trunks and the older Gohan as they continually battled the androids 17 and 18. Now, following the conclusion of Dragon Ball Z, we had various other animation shows and novels and continuations. Most notably, we had Dragon Ball GT, which ran from the late 1990s, showcasing a Goku which had returned to his younger child phase and accompanied alongside the likes of the future Trunks and also Pan, which far more centered on the adventure elements that we saw in the original Dragon Ball anime. And after a long hiatus, the universe returned with Dragon Ball Super in 2015, running for 131 episodes, focusing very much on the prequel story on the last 10 years after the heroes encountered Majin Buu. Now sadly, both series fell way short of matching the epic scope and storytelling of Dragon Ball Z. Now since then, there has been so much in terms of computer games, fan films, as Dragon Ball Z continues to be prominent and relevant within today's culture, and that's really overall its biggest achievement. Yes, you do have other long-standing animes such as the likes of One Piece, Naruto, Berserk, and also we have current popular successful anime shows such as Attack on Titan, My Hero Academia, One Punch Man, Demon Slayer, but in my personal opinion, none of those come close to holding the same amount of impact and iconography and inspiration generated from Dragon Ball Z. No other anime had the same crossover effect to Western culture that Dragon Ball Z did. It was the anime that got so many people into manga and Japanese animation, not only in terms of watching it, but also being inspired to actually become professional artists. So it's for all of those reasons why for me Dragon Ball Z still remains the greatest anime of all time, not only because of its impact, but primarily because of its story, its characterization, the epic elements in terms of the action and spectacle and scale. We truly haven't seen a show like Dragon Ball Z, and I'm not sure going ahead that we will truly see something like it again. And it's for all of those reasons why I firmly believe that Dragon Ball Z still remains the greatest and most impactful and most iconic anime of all time. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on Dragon Ball Z. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you are passionate about any other anime, you can check out the playlist where I review various other anime movies and shows. If you feel you have a favourite anime and would like to see me cover it on this channel, then let me know and I'll provide a review of it as well if I've seen it. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.